Caregiving can sometimes feel like an impossible struggle. Caregivers may be torn between taking care of loved ones and trying to maintain balance in life. The good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. The Caring Generation with host Pamela D. Wilson is here to focus on the conversation of caring. You're not alone. In fact, you're in exactly the right place to share stories and learn tips and resources to help you and your loved ones. So now, please welcome the host of The Caring Generation, Pamela D. Wilson.
This is Pamela D. Wilson, caregiving expert, speaker, consultant, and guardian of the Caring Generation. The Caring Generation focuses on the conversation of caring, giving us permission to talk about aging, the challenges of caregiving, and everything in between. It's no surprise that needing care or becoming a caregiver changes everything. The Caring Generation is here to guide you along the journey, to let you know that you're not alone. You are in exactly the right place to share stories and learn about caregiving programs and resources to help you and your loved ones plan for what's ahead. Invite your parents, spouses, family, friends, colleagues, coworkers, and everyone you know to listen to the show, available on podcast apps worldwide. If you have a question or an idea for a future program, share your idea with me by commenting on my social media posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and the videos on my YouTube channel. This week's episode is special for a couple of reasons. It's episode number 171, and it actually begins year 8 of the Caring Generation podcasts. I thank all of you for listening and sharing the program with others you know. So today we're going to talk about 10 things that don't make sense to caregivers until much later in life. As you know, caregivers are constantly in what I call doing mode. They may not make any time to consider the long-term effects of decisions that can seem insignificant at the time. So today you're going to learn 10 things that don't really make sense to caregivers until hindsight or wisdom or experience catches up with you later in life. These tips can help you avoid being filled with regret by offering insights for working through challenging situations that caregivers face every day and all of the decisions that you have to make that are not easy. Caregiver skills are most often learned through experience in the school of life. As with many roles in life, caregiving is often that do-it-yourself, paint-by-numbers job. The work isn't easy. Caregivers can feel taken for granted or resentful. In fact, being a caregiver can require every last ounce of energy and mental strength that you have. So if even one of these tips catches your attention and helps you in any way, your time here was worth the trade-off in comparison to all those other things you could be doing. Because as we know, caregivers trade their time and their lives to care for aging parents, spouses, and other people. Some of the insights here, I'll be honest, they are not rocket science. You may have heard them and let them go in and out of one ear or another, or just kind of float by. And it's because you weren't motivated, or the information wasn't important at the time. But today, things are so much worse, and you might be looking for some solutions. This experience happens to all of us in one form or another at any point in our lives. Sometimes, honestly, we have to become so miserable that the misery or dissatisfaction is what motivates us. So, number 1, 4 things that don't make sense to caregivers until much later in life. The actions of caregivers teach other people how to treat them. How people respond impacts the self-esteem, confidence levels, health and well-being of caregivers. And it doesn't matter if you are the initiator with others responding to you, or if you are the receiver who responds to another person or event. When aging parents or spouses don't appreciate a caregiver's efforts, it's really easy to feel unimportant or devalued, as if nothing you do makes any difference. You might feel defensive if you've been treated poorly in any life situation. If others have hurt your feelings or given you reasons not to trust them, you may be really hesitant to open up or trust anyone. This hurt or distrust can carry over into other relationships in your life and make it difficult for you to establish new relationships with the people that help you care for your parents, doctors, nurses, the healthcare system. So here's a few ways that actions teach others how to treat us. If you have good relationships with others, you may have positive self-esteem, and you might be less anxious or stressed because you're not constantly worrying about what this person or that person will do or say. One of the most significant parts of teaching others how to treat you is to be free of unrealistic expectations of other people that steal your time and your life. It's also being unattached to the outcome. You do the best that you can do and hope for the best. Modeling what you believe to be good behavior is a way to show others how you want to be treated. The example of your actions and the consistency of your actions is a step forward to how to show others how you want to be approached or treated. Many of you have heard the saying, well, act as if. If you want to be patient, be more patient with other people. If you want to be loved, be more lovable. If you want more friends, be friendly. Whatever you want, you must do and be that thing or possess that quality. Now, I know many people are going to put this in financial terms of, I want $1 million. Well, it's impossible to get from $1 or $10,000 to $1 million overnight. So think about what is at the core of your desires. What do you really want? What would having $1 million give you? Is it freedom, happiness, the ability to buy what you want, do work that you love? Or if it's freedom from caregiving activities that you want, what is the essence of that? Having more free time to do nothing? Is it sitting out in nature? Is it watching the sunrise every morning? Spending time with friends? Those are things that you can do today to bring more of that into your life. So let's go back to that money example. Put $5 or $10 or $20 in your pocket and go to the store or look online and look at all the things that you can buy, but don't buy them. Say to yourself, I have this $5, $10, $20 bill and I can buy these things, or I have this $5, $10, or $20 bill. What can I do with it that would make me happy or would benefit me in the future? So if you want more time for yourself as a caregiver, you have to investigate specifically how you will do less. Creating more time for you may mean bringing a volunteer or a paid caregiver into the home. Or it may be moving a parent to a location where they can be cared for without you doing all of that work. Now, there are sticking points to everything. There's places where we all get stuck. And I know that offering this example might take caregivers to a place of financial worry, but let's hit the hard stuff. If your parent or parents did not save money for their care, as a caregiver, it's likely you'll feel responsible. You'll want to help. My advice very early on is to investigate public assistance programs like Medicaid or CalAIM or long-term care support services in the states where you live. All these Medicaid programs come by very different names. Investigate these before your parents run out of money. Investigate these options before your parents need more care than you can provide and you are burned out or exhausted. So when you look back at the concept of teaching other people how to treat you, this includes how you respond to other people. For example, if you lose patience with another person, do they lose patience with you? If so, it's possible that the other person followed your lead. You were impatient. They're mirroring your behavior. They became impatient. Another example, if you are a problem solver, which many caregivers are, you may want a parent or a spouse to be interested in problem solving. But if the person that you care for has dementia or doesn't feel well all the time, this may not be possible or practical. So you may want them to listen to your suggestions instead, or to be flexible enough to consider options that may include being open to receiving help from someone other than you so that you get more time back. By modeling behaviors of problem solving and flexibility, you set an example and establish boundaries about what you believe to be appropriate behavior. Then if the other person follows along, express appreciation, assuming, of course, that the behavior is good. Number 2 in the list of 10 things that don't make sense to caregivers until later is don't get caught up in peer pressure. If being a caregiver changes your beliefs or your approach to life, which it may, your friends or your peers may not share your thoughts, which can be difficult. Or if you're in the workplace and you're a caregiver, the lives of your coworkers may be very different from yours if they don't have aging parents that they're caring for, or maybe they care for children, or maybe they don't have aging parents or children. So these situations are just so different. But I'll use an example that all of us have experienced to share this idea of peer pressure or how other people pressure us to do things. So let's say that you're at work and one of your coworkers says something negative about another person who's not present. How do you respond? Do you follow along with the negative talk and the criticism? Do you agree? Or do you say, I didn't have that experience with John or Mary. What's going on with the situation? Maybe everybody else in that group thinks talking behind John or Mary's back is okay. Or you or another person might view this behavior as inappropriate or disrespectful or toxic. Now, it's very common that the person leading the negative discussion may have actual facts and information to share that substantiate their feelings. It's also very possible that the person leading the negative discussion may not have conflict resolution skills, or maybe they feel threatened by the person in question. So until you learn more, being asked to agree and take sides can be off limits. It can feel uncomfortable. Because I can tell you, the person on the other side being criticized may have a very different opinion about that situation. But in all situations, it's okay to stand up for what you believe, realizing that maybe those beliefs will change someday. So while it may feel uncomfortable to disagree with your peers or your friends, realize that you might need more information, or it's okay if you don't want to be seen as oppositional. But if the group or anyone in there is doing things against your morals or your standards, it's okay to ask questions or to just remove yourself from the group. Now, I want to translate this to family caregiving relationships. If you are a caregiver, you know that family members can be all talk. They're great at offering suggestions, but when you need help, they never show up. Siblings, other people, can be very critical of the efforts of the primary caregiver who's doing all the work. Yet, all they can say is, I'm too busy to help you. I have other priorities. I have a job. I have a marriage. I have children. I live too far. Blah, 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 blah. So if this is the situation, you can think about setting a boundary by saying, well, when you have time to help and you can contribute, then you can have a say in what happens. If your only goal is to criticize my efforts, please don't say anything at all. Let's add to this with the thought that aging parents can fuel these family disagreements. They can throw fuel on the fire. So if your parents are speaking badly of your siblings or their friends or somebody else, just put a stop to it. Now, here's the foundation for this, though. Sometimes when the person needing care feels that their life is out of control, the only control they feel they have is to blame or criticize other people, and this can be to get attention. I want you to feel sorry for me. I want you to pay attention to me. Oh, my friends are not helpful, or my children are horrible. Super important, whatever your role, avoid getting caught up in the middle of these disagreements that you did not create. Suggest that this person who is criticizing talk directly with the offending person to work out the problem. By taking these actions, you model respectful behavior. And of course, you don't want your mom or dad or whoever you're caring for to be talking badly about you to other people. Running away from conflict and talking indirectly about other people never solves the conflict. It can only make it worse. So we're headed on to number 3 for things that caregivers don't know until much later, but let's take a quick break. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Please visit my website, PamelaDWilson.com. On there, a lot of hope, help, and support for caregivers and aging adults, my online caregiving course, my blog, this podcast, links to my YouTube channel, all of my social media channels, including my online caregiver support on Facebook. It's called The Caregiving Trap. This is Pamela D. Wilson on The Caring Generation. Stay with me. We'll be right back. This is Pamela D. Wilson, caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Visit my website, PamelaDWilson.com, to access my online caregiver program, How to Care for Aging Parents. I want to mention this is episode 171, going into and celebrating year 8 of this podcast. So let's get back to more of the things caregivers don't realize until much later in life. Number 3. While it may feel uncomfortable, it really is okay for people to disagree. Sometimes we've become shy of this just because of everything that's going on in public and the disagreements that we see on television and in the media and in politics and just everywhere. You may be afraid to say anything or to express your attitude. But you don't have to feel that way if the people that you are with are considerate, as you should be. If you have a different opinion, the key is to just be kind and respectful, assuming this is how you want others to respond. For caregivers, the challenges arise when caring for loved ones who agree with everything in the doctor's office, but refuse to follow through with those recommendations for health, eating, exercise. As the caregiver, when the people that you care for refuse care, you can feel pretty powerless over a situation that you're really putting your time and energy in to improve. Nobody can motivate another person to do anything. And if a parent or a spouse doesn't want to do something, even though there may be negative consequences, they have the right to choose. The important thing for caregivers is to become unattached to the outcome. But the problem arises if this person's agreement or disagreement directly affects your life or your responsibilities. If there's no direct effect, ask yourself, why does it matter that they need to do what you want them to do? Why does it matter if they do X or Y? Why are you so invested in that outcome? Is it because you as the caregiver need to feel right or listened to or important? Because if you live for the approval or the need for agreement from other people, you can really get stuck to move ahead with your life. This is where having shared discussions is really important. Mom or Dad, it really would be great if you could, do what the doctor recommends. What do you think about that? See if your parent agrees, and if they don't agree, maybe provide some more detail or explain more consequences about why it would be a good thing to do. Now, they still don't have to agree. And if that's the case, then you have a choice to make. Let's say that you're caring for an aging parent and you want them to pay for a caregiver so that you can have more time for your life, your career, family, friends, and social life. So if you make the suggestion and your aging parent says, no, I'm not going to pay for a caregiver, I refuse, you're my caregiver and your time is free. So you can say, well, I know that's how you feel, but I'm going to be less of your caregiver because I'm going to start taking more time off. And I want you to have the help that you need, but I can't do it all. So, you have a choice. You can hire somebody or start to do things for yourself because I can't be here every night of the week and the weekends. Now, as the caregiver, you have to be okay with reducing the time that you spend and work through that guilt, because guilt can be a very strong motivator for so many caregivers who remain in impossible situations. Think about whether you want somebody else to have this degree of control over your life and your emotions, because if you allow this, that is exactly what you are saying you are okay with. Let's move on to number 4 in the list of 10 things that caregivers don't realize or that don't make sense to them until so much later. Number 4 is criticism is rarely about you. Feelings of criticism or blame or guilt can be really difficult to muddle through or to understand, especially if you're on the receiving end of this constant storm of emotions and criticism and blame and just chaos and mishigas and toxic behaviors. But one way to add perspective to this is to ask yourself, are you ever critical of other people or other situations? And if so, what is the issue happening or the characteristics of the person that you don't like or the habits you're criticizing? Then ask yourself if you have experienced any of these in your life. Or maybe there's a similar person who made you feel insecure or damaged your self-esteem. Criticism and blame from others, whether you are doing the criticism or receiving the criticism, can really be a heavy burden for anybody to carry, and it can be hard to not take it personally. What usually happens is, if you're on the receiving end, you can have your feelings be hurt, you can feel guilty, and that is going to make you want more approval from this person who you believe is disappointed in your actions. Now, the first 4 tips that we talked about, all of these kind of fall in line because they help us understand how negative people, how feeling criticized or being influenced by peers to the point where you don't feel you can express your opinions can impact a lot of aspects of a caregiver's life. And the idea here is to work toward balance. The best caregiving relationships balance aspects of wanting to be helpful by being able to maintain your sense of self and who you are. Problems arise when caregivers attach their life to the person that they care for to the degree that you become one person, that to the degree that it's impossible to separate what you want from the needs and the wants of the other person. So maintaining independence or this sense of self is really good for all relationships, marriages, friendships, work. Imbalances arise when one person looks to other people to meet their needs. Now, this power shift can happen, especially in caregiving situation, if a caregiver gives up a job and, let's say, moves into a parent's home to care for mom or dad full time, or the caregiver moves parents into their home to care for them. Something eventually has to give. These relationships can be unbalanced even if the caregiver and the person needing care don't live together. So if you notice yourself shifting your focus to only caregiving or only a single activity, and you start excluding everything else in your life, this is a warning sign. Sirens should be going off. This can indicate that your life is becoming unbalanced. And the tip here is to notice it, recognize it, feel bad about it, but work toward and investigate solutions to work through this challenge so that your life can be more balanced. Now, as a caregiver, I'm there with you. I realize this can be difficult, especially if there's nobody but you to care for a loved one. But I will say that it can be really impossible to understand how having a short-term focus or a long-term focus can impact your life, your family relationships, your social relationships, work, your health, until one day, for better or worse, you're in this situation and you're looking back and you're saying, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I gave up my life to care for an aging parent. I gave up my job, my career, my friends, my family, everything. But the only thing I could tell myself at the time was, I have to get through this, and then I'll deal with everything else. Well, that "and then" happens to be now. And what happens is some caregivers live in the past. What we learn from this is that experience does confirm that doing hard things and working through all these challenges raises tolerance levels for what a person can do and what a person is willing to tolerate. But if you're always the one doing the work, if you're the person who is relied upon day after day to come to the rescue of an aging parent or to save the day, this will eventually have negative consequences for your life and your well-being. Living in the past and dreaming about what might have been is not a solution, because you may be imagining a life that would have never happened if you made a different choice. All we have is today, the present moment, because the unexpected can happen at any moment. So it's best to focus on how to move closer to your goals today and decide to be happy instead of being filled with regret. Number 5 in the list of things caregivers don't realize until later in life is try never, ever, ever, ever to offer advice or to solve a problem unless you're asked. Now you might say, well, Pamela, you do these podcasts and you're offering advice all the time. Yes, it's because I am answering questions that caregivers ask me. So in a sense, this is what I do. It's my job. It's my life's purpose. But in other relationships, my lips stay zipped. Ending this tendency to offer advice or to step in to save the day can be really hard for caregivers because you want to be helpful. Not helping might seem irresponsible when you believe that you know what should be done. But here's the thing to think about. Who says that your way or my way is the right way? Not everything everyone thinks is accurate or on target. If you ask other people, you may receive a long list of other opinions. Consider that the solutions that work for you or for me is because of experience, knowledge, persistence, skills, other assets that are possessed. So these solutions that work for you or me, they may fail for another person. And then what happens, this person who took the advice is angry and upset. Let's use a example that everybody can relate to, right? Buying a car, new or used. A current vehicle is like on its last leg, and any more repairs are just going to be throwing money down the toilet. So your friend needs a new car. For some people, this is an obvious solution, right? You replace the car with a new or a used car. You sell the old car, you donate it, you take it to the junkyard, you scrap it if it's unrepairable. But you know what buying a car means to you. If you don't know what buying a car means to another person, how can you make that recommendation? Do you know what they can afford? Do they have a price range or a budget for a car? Can they pay cash? If they have to get a loan, are they employed? Do they have sufficient non-committed income to make that car payment? If they're going to get a loan, is it a 3-year or a 5-year loan? Do they have additional money to pay for car insurance and maintenance and all the things that go along with having a car? Having a car can be a huge expense. So this idea of gaining a perspective about different life circumstances, mine, yours, another person's, falls into this idea of this simple solution. Well, just you need a car, buy a car, right? But the considerations may be very different from me to you to another person who may have a lot of constraints. Maybe they don't make a lot of money. Maybe they can't qualify for a loan. Maybe there's a whole host of other issues and reasons why buying a car is going to be really challenging. So when you think about this, when the person you care for or anybody expresses concerns or complaints, instead of jumping in to offer a solution, the better course of action may be to ask questions to understand instead of solving the problem or giving advice. Because their concerns may be based on past experiences that they have never shared with you. Maybe they remember mistakes they made and they are scared to death of making another mistake. Maybe they don't have the confidence that there is a solution. There's so many factors that come into decision making. So at best, what you can do is ask questions to help another person maybe think about issues that they haven't considered. While you want to be helpful, don't take on other people's problems. You can be emotionally supportive, but not prescriptive or directive by telling them what to do. Take a step back, allow other people to make their choices, and live with the consequences. And I know it can feel gut-wrenching to watch aging parents or your children make bad decisions, right? You're watching this and you're saying, oh my gosh, I know it's like a train wreck. They're headed for disaster. It's going to be bad. Whether they are refusing to take medications or exercise or follow doctor's recommendations. And it's especially bad if their bad choices affect you. So this is when we're going to move to the idea of, are you moving ahead or falling backward? And we're going to take another quick break. This anniversary show, episode 171, is longer than most of my recent podcasts because I am celebrating the start of the 8th year of this podcast. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Stay with me. We'll be right back. This is Pamela D. Wilson, caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Welcome back to episode 171 and the start of the 8th year in total of the Caring Generation podcast. Many of you know that I restarted this podcast in 2019, but I actually started this podcast on the air in Denver, Colorado on 630 KHOW AM back in 2009. I actually did the show live on air on the radio every Sunday for about 2.5 years. So let's get back to things that don't make sense to caregivers until later. And part of this, as we were talking about, is gaining a perspective about different life circumstances. And the idea of, are you moving ahead or falling backwards? So when we're thinking about decision making, it's not only aging parents that have choices to make and to live with the consequences. People make decisions every day that will affect them today, tomorrow, next week, next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. This is the hard part about making decisions when there is so much up in the air. It's also complicated because when we have a decision to make, we always don't understand the consequences. We're not always jotting down that list of, well, this is good, this is bad, the pros, the cons. So let's talk about really simple things, right? So I want to lose weight, but I want this piece of cake. So if my goal is to lose weight and I eat this cake, I am consciously doing something that will not move me forward to my goal. Is that something that we might be able to agree on, right? Or if you want to buy a new car, but you need to save some money for a down payment. You get stressed. You're thinking, oh, I need to go shop. I need some retail therapy to lift my mood. And you're spending the money that you were going to save for the down payment. Are you moving closer to getting that car or further away from getting that car? So as you can see, it's really easy to have a goal or want something, but have habits or these tendencies to make decisions that take you further away from what you want. We all do it. Don't feel bad. But the best question to ask yourself and others when you're trying to solve these problems is that question. Pros, cons. Does this move me closer or further away from this short, medium, or long-term goal? And then you decide, do I do it or do I not do it? Number 10 in the list of things caregivers don't realize until way later in life is that people only see the results. They don't see the hard work or the years that you put into whatever it is you're doing. And I relate this most commonly to people in the media industry, right? So a movie star, they may have been acting for 10 years, or a singer or a songwriter. Maybe they were singing and writing songs for 10 years or 15 years. And finally, they get that big break, and all of a sudden, everybody knows who they are. Well, all you see is the current success. You don't see the, I can't pay my rent this month. Oh, peanut butter and jelly is the only thing I can eat. I have to live in my car because I have nowhere else to sleep. You don't see all those struggles that happened before they got to the success. It's the same for caregivers. If you're a caregiver, you put a lot of effort into caring for somebody else. You can be proud of these efforts even if nobody else appreciates you. This translates into the importance of asking for help and researching options so that you do not drown yourself in caregiving responsibilities or get whisked away by the whirlwind of related activities. It also means not taking the responsibility away from another person to help themselves. Your siblings may not offer to help because they look at you and they're like, oh, my sister, she's amazing. She does it all. I don't know how she does it, and I don't want to be helping, so I'm not going to say anything. Now, think about this. Just because you're superhuman and you can, for example, run to the grocery store and be back in 20 minutes, but your aging parents, it takes them 2 hours because they got to make a list and they got to get in the car and then they forget something and they drive back home and they got to get their grocery bags and then they walk through the store for 2 hours and talk to people, right? It takes them 2 hours to go to the grocery store and you're thinking, man, it takes me 20 minutes. I should do this for them. No, you should not. Allow other people to do what they can do and to have control over what they can. That idea of being self-sufficient contributes to having good self-esteem and confidence, even for caregivers. Taking over anything that another person can do, unless you're doing a quick favor or something like that, just because you can does not make this a wise choice. That choice makes other people, it makes the people that you care for more dependent on you. Why do things that other people can do? Is it because you need approval? Are you looking for approval? Because by taking on more work, you're only making more work for yourself, and eventually you have less time. So here's the question to ask. What have I taken over for the people that I care from, and can I give these things back? So, I don't recommend being a complainer or a whiner about all this work that you're doing, right, or the time that you committed because you made this choice. But being a silent sufferer and being uncomfortable discussing the amount of work that you're contributing and the time you're trading to be a caregiver is something that you want to become uncomfortable with. Become uncomfortable with being that silent sufferer. Other people can't read your mind. They can't live your life. They don't know what you're thinking. If you don't bring it up, they're never going to know that you are exhausted and tired and that you need a break. So become a better communicator so that all relationships in your life can improve because you're saying and you're expressing your needs and you're trying to work with other people to find a common understanding about how to move forward. Value yourself and value the people that you love. Number 8, for things that caregivers don't realize until it's way too late, is the way that you take care of your health in your 20s and 30s, or not, will result in the health you experience in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. Look at the health problems of the person that you care for today. Unless they were involved in some kind of accident that caused injuries, it's more than likely that what you see today dates all the way back to their health habits 10 or 20 years ago. Dementia or Alzheimer's, it doesn't show up overnight. So much research is out there to confirm that there are signs of dementia and Alzheimer's 10 to 20 years before a diagnosis. Health habits, taking care of the body and mind, have a cumulative effect. So does saving money for retirement so that you can pay for care when you're older. The earlier you begin to take action, the healthier you will be when you're older. The earlier you begin to save, not spend money, the longer time frame that your money has to grow. Time has a value. There's a value in time. As we talked, health problems, once they show up, are not going to disappear overnight. In fact, most people don't even choose to reverse these health problems because they don't notice them. If you don't go to the doctor, you think, well, I just feel a little bad. I'm okay today. I'm coughing, I've got a headache. Well, maybe these are signs of something that you should know about. Maybe these are signs that you should go to the doctor. So do that. But then be the person who asks, well, if I don't want to take this medicine, is there something I can do to manage this high blood pressure that I have, or diabetes, or whatever diagnosis that the doctor gave you? Never assume that your options are limited. Always realize that there are other things that can be done. Because you see the healthy people out there. You see them jogging in the morning. You see them walking. They feel good. Why not feel good like they do if you can? The thing is, you've got to, as we talked about early, follow the behavior that they model if that's what you want to receive in life. Create that essence in your life. So, number 9 in the list of things that caregivers don't realize until much later is that worry and fear can hold you back from creating the life that you want. As we talked, and we see this all the time as caregivers, life is filled with uncertainties. Will mom or dad get sick today? Will they fall? Will they go to the emergency room? If mom or dad are in hospice care, how much longer are they going to live? How much longer do I have to be a caregiver? Only as long as you want to. Only as long as you choose to. Why? Procrastination. So we have to think about how to move things ahead. Worry and fear can be really paralyzing if we look at all these uncertainties and feel overwhelmed and concerned about, all these bad things can happen. I'm going to make a choice and it's going to be bad. Well, if you think about decision making as probability making, it might be a little easier. How likely is this to happen based on all these factors and all the information that I have? Is there anywhere I can go to do this research? Worry and fear can really result in damaged self-esteem and a lack of confidence if you tell yourself that everything you've done up until now has been a failure. It didn't work out the way that you wanted to. Stop that. Instead, start doing things that raise your self-esteem and your confidence. Read something that puts you in a good mood. Do something small that makes you feel like you've accomplished something. Because if you're in a good mood, you're more likely to feel good about yourself. Something small, honestly, could be as simple as taking a shower. So many caregivers tell me they don't even have time to take a shower or wash their hair or get dressed and put some makeup on so that they look or feel good. Do something for yourself. Other things that can represent an accomplishment. Do the laundry, put it away. Make your bed, walk the dog, clean out your refrigerator. There's plenty of things that we all do every day that we can feel good about to raise our confidence levels. And if you're in unfamiliar territory, if you really don't know what to do some research. Consult a care navigator like myself, a care advocate like myself. Consult a doctor, an attorney, a CPA. Consult somebody who's been through a similar situation. But as you do this, remember, recognize that the outcome of another person may not be your outcome because you have different backgrounds and skills. So instead, what you want to do is think of probabilities. How likely is this to happen based on X, my experience, my commitment, the health problems of my parents, so on and so on. And you can put this in that perspective, like we talked earlier, finding a new job. If you want to get a job, you got to do something. You can't just, send out one application a month and hope that, people are going to be knocking down your door. You got to increase that probability. You've got to maybe apply to 1 or 2 jobs every day for a month or 2 months or 3 months. The idea is raising the odds. So raising the number of people who are willing to help us. Increase the likelihood that our parents will participate in their care. In caregiving, you can have many goals, and let's just talk about one that a lot of caregivers have. It's reducing the time you spend in caregiving so that you have more free time. Think about what you took over doing for a spouse or a parent that they can still do, as we talked about. Reverse that course and ask them to start doing those things. Then think of who else can help reduce the time you devote to care. Can you hire that caregiver? Can you order groceries and prescriptions online and have them delivered? Is there a neighbor that can help out? What can you do to change the situation? Because unless you start taking actions today that move you closer to that goal instead of further away from that goal, You're going to be in the same place in 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And you're going to look back and think, oh my God, I've burned so much of my life not doing anything. If you're dissatisfied with your life today, you must make different choices if you're not where you are. Let's take our last break, and then we're going to come back to number 10. I'll share what that is in a few minutes after this song. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. You're listening to The Caring Generation. Please do share this podcast with other people that you know who are looking for hope, help, and support. Stay with me. We'll be right back. This is Pamela D. Wilson. You're with me on The Caring Generation, episode 171, entering its 8th year of being on air. And we're back to talk about 10 things that don't make sense to caregivers until later, and we're back with number 10. Life is short. Learn to be alone and happy. Most caregivers I know, including those in my online support group on Facebook, it's called The Caregiving Trap, I invite you to join, started as caregivers years ago, and they thought it would be this short-term situation, this short-term project. Now, some of these people have been caregivers for 5, 10, 15, 20 or more years. Many who cared for an aging parent are now caring for a spouse. So caregiving is kind of what I call accumulative. It quickly adds up, the tasks grow, the time grows, and the duties can consume your life. There's so many things in this list here that I mentioned that many of us just don't realize because we are too busy doing. Instead of asking that question, does this action get me closer to the goal that I want, or is it taking me further away? When you reach your 60s or 70s and you have 10 or 20 years left, how do you want to spend your time? Because one day we are all going to wake up. It could be our 40th, 50th, 60th, 70th, 80th, 90th, 100th birthday. And we're going to ask ourselves, man, where did all that time go? Why is my health so bad? Why didn't I do all those things I dreamed of? We don't consider how life is short until we are approaching the end of life. So ask yourself these questions. Are you moving closer or further away from your goal? Do you even have a goal? Are you letting years pass by due to laziness or indecision, procrastination? You're scared to make a decision. Or you're being pulled away from all these important things and you're just too busy. We've all been in these places where we feel stuck because of life circumstances. Life would not be life if these things didn't happen. It's what we decide to do with that life and with the circumstances that challenge us the most. Those that create the greatest challenges in life can also create the greatest changes and the most wonderful things that can happen in life. Everybody makes mistakes. Don't beat yourself up. Learn from them. We all have the power today to ask ourselves that old question, closer or further away from my goals? And if you don't have a goal, find your why. What do you want to do? What motivates you? What do you love most in life? What would you do if money wasn't a concern, which I realize it is for many people? Be thoughtful when you attach yourself to caregiving. Be thoughtful about setting aside those things you love, the people you love, your good health, your friends, activities, because I can tell you it might be more complicated than you imagine to restart all those good habits that you had if you dropped them. Maybe more difficult to work your way back into somebody's life who's moved on because you didn't have time for them. Maybe more challenging to get back to work in a job that you love at that same salary that you left if your skills have become rusty. Life changes so quickly. There's so much technology and everything going on. it can be hard to keep up. But I'll tell you, all of these decisions that you make as a caregiver, one by one, they may not seem to have consequences. They may not seem to be important. But years down the road, when you look back and you combine all these things, 20 decisions, 30 decisions, all of those decisions that you made really can be life-changing. And I want to talk about this podcast in the Caring Generation, now celebrating its 8th year. When I look back to all the years that I've devoted to this podcast, it did take a lot of time to see what this effort brought to my life. So before this current format, the Caring Generation was an internet radio program starting in 2018-19. Before that, from 2009 to 2011 or 12, it was broadcast live in studio, 630 KHOW AM in Denver. But when I look back, I'm thinking, what did this bring into my life? Well, it made me a better speaker, a better writer, a creator, a researcher. I love to talk to people. Creating this podcast has allowed me to do so much research and gain knowledge and experience and talk to people worldwide who have a lot of knowledge and experience that they are willing to share. Talking to people from other countries, it's interesting because the culture here in the United States is very different from the culture in India and Africa and Asia and somewhere else. So the people that I reach and connect with through this podcast, those who share their life experiences with me, bring a lot of joy and interesting experiences into my life. And of course, every now and then, like everybody, right? I think, oh, this is too much. Creating this show is taking up too much of my time. Or simple things like, what on earth am I going to talk about this week? But amazingly, some caregiver asks some amazing question that inspires me to do the show. So at least for now, I am going to continue researching and educating and speaking because I don't want to give up work that inspires me to keep going. It's a reason that I get up every day, especially on those days when, like most of you, I wonder if I am making any difference at all. Is anybody out there listening? Is anybody out there visiting my website? Is anybody out there watching all the videos on my YouTube channel? Well, the answer is fortunately yes. So for those of you who have been with me since I started at this podcast, this broadcast endeavor since 2009 or 2019 or beyond, I thank you for hanging in there with me and for sharing this show and everything that I do. For those of you listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. Check out the other 170 episodes. There are amazing interviews, amazing information. And please, I ask you, share this podcast with everybody that you know, my website, Pamela D. Wilson, my YouTube channel, my online courses, so that we can extend the support and the education and the love that so many caregivers and the people they care for need and deserve. Together, we can change the perception of caregiving worldwide. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. I thank you so much for being here with me. I'm sending you much light, much love. Have a fabulous week until we are here together again.
Tune in each week for The Caring Generation with host Pamela D. Wilson. Come join the conversation and see how Pamela can provide solutions and peace of mind for everyone. Here on Pamela D. Wilson's The Caring Generation.